Chris Yandak, C1 Review, covering Las Vegas and the world. Today we welcome back show business legend, impressionist, actor, comedian Rich Little. You can now see him every Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at the Laugh Factory at the Horseshoe Las Vegas on the Las Vegas Strip. Show starts at 6:30 p.m. Rich, thanks so much for joining us again on C1 Review. How are you, sir?
I'm fine. Good to see you again.
It's always a delight to see you, as you know. So how does it feel to return to headlining the Las Vegas Strip where you belong?
Well, I didn't know whether I was going to do it or not. At my age, you think about retiring, but I have nothing to retire to, so I thought I'd give it a shot. And so far, it's worked out fine.
So how is this version of the show different from others? I've heard there's some new clips you're showing everybody.
Yeah, I'm doing a bit with Mel Torme from my old television show, and Mel, of course, discovered me and got me on the Judy Garland show, so he was a special friend. And I'm also doing a song from Camelot with Richard Burton.
And you're actually singing it?
Yeah, I'm singing it. Yeah.
That is truly phenomenal. Well, I know that people are going to be excited to see the new show. Again, I'm very excited you're back on the Las Vegas Strip. I think it's fair to say the longest running entertainers in Las Vegas who have played forever are you and Wayne Newton. So thoughts on that? Any Wayne Newton stories as well?
No, I don't really have any. I see him occasionally, but we're not really that close. But I've known him since the beginning of my career in Vegas, and he's a good entertainer. He puts on a pretty good show.
Well, of course, you're a great entertainer as well. So speaking of all of this, are we getting all the classic impressions in the new show as well, usually, the stuff that people are accustomed to?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I do Paul Lynde and Andy Rooney and Dean Martin, and all I do is change the jokes. But, I'm Johnny Carson. I still do Johnny Carson, even though it's been about 50 years since he went. But people remember him. That's amazing. Not young people, but people over 50 remember Johnny.
Well, I remember Johnny Carson as well, but I love history. So speaking of history, how do you think Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Sammy Davis Jr. would feel that you're still celebrating them every show in Las Vegas today?
I think they'd be pleased, because each generation has people they follow, and a lot of young people have no idea who Frank Sinatra or Dean Martin or Jack Benny or George Burns or Jimmy Stewart. They don't know who they are. They may have heard the name, or, some people have seen It's a Wonderful Life, but younger people don't seem to be interested in the past. That's not entirely true. Some people are, but I was when I was 18 years old. I was interested in Benny Goodman and Glenn Miller and all those great composers and singers from the past. Artie Shaw and oh my God, there's so many, But I was interested in the past. But a lot of people aren't.
Well, I'm interested in all of it, past, present, and future. And that's why I love having you on, because you can tell all these great stories that no one else can.
Yeah, and maybe somebody out there will remember them.
Well, listen, they're now in the C1 Review archive forever. So what people are going to be watching today, they'll get to see forever online. That's the beauty of where we are today.
So
Any advice to the youth of today? I just turned 40, as you know. Any advice to any of us?
Well, if you're lucky, if you get a job that you like, and a lot of people don't, but they just want the money. But if you like what you do, that's a big plus. And I like what I do. I mean, I've always liked to perform in front of people, and I'm as an actor. I've done a lot of acting parts, and a lot of commercials, and just a lot of television, and a lot of great things have happened to me in my career, and I'm very grateful. I thank the Lord every night for every day I have.
Sounds amazing, and I agree with you too. So we've had a lot of C1 interviews and conversations over the years, as you know. So I went back and I made a list of stuff that we have never talked about, so we can talk about some new things today. So let's go with it. What are your memories of roasting Kirk Douglas on the Dean Martin roast? What was that like?
Well, it went off very well, and it got a good reaction from him. But Frank Gorshin was the one that really did Kirk Douglas, and so my Kirk Douglas wasn't as great, I don't think, as Frank Gorshin's, and he did Burt Lancaster too. But you get known for certain impressions, and I guess I was known for certain voices, Johnny Carson and John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart, and Gorshin was known for Burt and Kirk Douglas and Walter Matthau, and he had a number of them that he was brilliant at. He was one of the best.
Well, speaking about another one, you also roasted famed novelist, screenwriter, and playwright and actor Truman Capote. Any stories on that?
Well, I did Truman Capote, and I think he liked it. I mean, he certainly was different with that little, sort of nasal voice that he had, but he was fun to do. And I remember President Reagan did Truman Capote, which was funny to see the President of the United States doing somebody like Truman Capote, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't great, but it wasn't bad. And then Reagan did John Wayne and Jimmy Stewart too. But, I wasn't going to tell them that they were only fair. I thought, oh, that's brilliant. What do you say to Ronald Reagan when he's doing Truman Capote? And I gave him a joke too, and he said, I can't wait to try that out on Gorbachev. I gave him a joke for Truman Capote, and here's the joke I gave him. A lot of people think that I wrote in cold blood, but that's not true. Actually, I wrote in ink.
What did you say to Reagan, in your opinion? Like, what do you think was really his best impression from a pro? Like, what do you think was his best moment?
Who, Reagan's?
Yeah.
His best moment? You mean doing impressions?
Correct, exactly.
He didn't really do impressions. He sort of did them, but he knew they weren't really great. But of course, being the president, I told him that I thought they were brilliant. But as Jimmy Stewart was this typical Jimmy Stewart you hear from a lot of people. Wow, that's a Jimmy Stewart. That's the way most people do Jimmy Stewart. But it wasn't bad, But the thing about Reagan is he had a wonderful sense of humor. So every time I would see him, he would have a joke, or I would give him a joke or something, because he just loved humor. And when I performed at his inauguration, I never saw a man laugh like that in my life. He was just doubled over, and Nancy too. And I show that clip in my show, and it's great to see Reagan laughing that hard, because He was a special person, and I was privileged to know him.
What do you think Ronald and Nancy, would think about you keeping their legacy alive in your act in Vegas? What do you think they
Oh, I
would
think
think?
they'd love it. I think they'd love it. Keeping their name alive. That's what Jimmy Stewart said to me one time. He said, "Rich, I don't have to do anything. You're doing it for me." And it's sort of true. I was keeping his name alive. I keep a lot of those people alive because that's my era, and if people come to see me and expect me to do modern impressions, there's not too many people today that you can imitate. But I still stick to the older people that are mostly gone now, but keep them alive by imitating them.
Absolutely no denying that. So let me just ask you, we've never done this before. I think we've talked about many of the United States presidents, but I was doing research and I've never heard your Bill Clinton. Can we hear a little of the 42nd president of the United States? Is that possible?
Bill Clinton. Well, the thing with Bill Clinton is as he gets older, the voice gets more static in it. It's not a clear sound, and yeah, I did a lot of Bill Clinton actually, and some of the jokes were a little raunchy, but he was a good person to imitate, but not so much anymore. You don't hear about him too much anymore, but he did have that kind of crackly voice,
Rich, it's still up there in the top 1%. Most people can't do that impression. I thought it was phenomenal.
Oh, well, thanks. I don't know about that, but thanks.
Let's talk about one other president that we've never talked about, Gerald Ford. What was he like?
Gerald Ford. He was fun to do. I did him at the Reagan inauguration, and got a great reaction from Reagan when I did my Gerald Ford. Of course, when I did Gerald Ford, I was a little unkind to him. I always had him falling and tripping over something, and which was a little unfair because everybody falls, and going up the stairs at the plane, eventually you're gonna trip. And when he did, it became national news. So he was always considered as sort of a stumble bum, Gerald Ford. I remember Chevy Chase came out doing Gerald Ford and tripped over the sofa. We were all sitting in the sofa, and he tripped over the sofa and landed on top of everybody, spilling their drink and crashing down on them. And it was not a good look, but I can remember when he did that. And I was sitting on the sofa and I went tumbling. But anyway, and when I see Dick Van Dyke at his age dancing, I'm amazed, absolutely amazed. But, it must be the genes.
Have any stories about Dick while we're on it?
No, not really. I had dinner with him, but that was about 6-7 years ago. And I was amazed then how bright he was. And he knew exactly what was going on, and he had more energy. But, now it's 6 or 7 years later, and I hear he's still in pretty good shape.
It's pretty amazing.
But I don't know him that well. I don't know him that well.
Gotcha.
But our connection was Laurel and Hardy. We both loved Laurel and Hardy, and he did a great Stan Laurel, and I did my Oliver Hardy, and it was kind of funny. Yeah. Nice
Here's what I'm going to tell you. I love these stories. I love hearing them. Let's continue. You were on Dolly Parton's show back in 1988. Any Dolly Parton stories? We've never talked about her in all of our C1 interviews over the years.
No, I don't hardly remember doing the show. I couldn't even tell you what I did, you know. But I did do the show, and I've got a picture in my library of me with her. But I don't think we socialized at all. And I just think that I did the show, and all I can remember is how nice she was, but there wasn't a big connection, really.
Gotcha.
I can't
Speaking of,
remember what we talked about.
Gotcha. Well, always loved her, and I was going through your memoir before today's interview over the last couple of days to think about some things we hadn't talked about, and I saw that famous picture of you guys.
Yeah.
Speaking of shows, memories of being on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, brother. Yeah, I have some pretty good memories about Ed Sullivan. You know, the great stone face, and he was a strange man. He didn't have much personality, and everybody feared him so much because his show was very popular on Sunday. And all I can remember about Ed Sullivan is that I was living in Ottawa, my hometown, and I used to take the plane from Ottawa to, I don't know where, and then I'd end up in New York, and then take a cab in and do the show. And I to this day, I can't fathom the fact that I left the day of the show. I left in the morning to do the Ed Sullivan Show, and usually it was snowing like you wouldn't believe. And there I am going to the airport and I'm going to do the Ed Sullivan Show in about 3 hours. I don't know why I didn't go in the day before. I can remember one time arriving like 1 minute to 8. And the show had just started, and in I come, and I was on second. So oh boy, did I ever have to hurry. Oh my God, to get ready. And I don't know why the heck I didn't leave a day earlier, because I had nothing going on. But Ed had so many people that imitated him. And he liked it, but I think he faked it a lot. I don't think he really liked it when people impersonated him. I think he put on a little bit of a show to show that he was a good guy and could take it. But I don't think he liked it when people imitated him. But he pretended he did. You know.
Gotcha.
And, he was Mr. Show Business, wasn't he? Got one shot on Ed Sullivan, and if you did well, everybody knew who you were. Same with the Tonight Show, too. If you did a couple of shots on the Tonight Show, and they went over well, and the Ed Sullivan Show, just about everybody would stop you in the street because everybody watched those shows. And so it was a quick way to become popular by doing Ed Sullivan and Johnny Carson.
And everybody knows who you were then, now, and that's why you're still a Las Vegas headliner.
I guess. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Not I guess, it is.
Okay, Chris.
You're a legend. You're a legend, and that's
in my own mind.
I'm so grateful that you're still performing on the Las Vegas Strip, though. Seriously, you're passing on the history to people.
Uh-huh.
Listen, 3 days a week to me, it's your connection with society. You know what I'm saying? It's your connection with humanity. And by the way, that keeps you alive.
Probably. Yeah. Because you're using your brain, and you have to memorize all the material and everything. So it does keep you going. other than just sitting home and becoming a couch potato. To get out there and perform at my age is really great for me. Keeps me young, fairly anyway.
Oh, I agree with that. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Ready? Charlie Munger, as you know, was Warren Buffett's partner at Berkshire Hathaway. He was 99. He worked probably to the day he passed away a couple years ago, and he was 99. So it's like, why would you stop?
That's great. That's great. Well, as long as I can stand up and remember the lines, and people react, I'll just keep going. And when you think of people like Dick Van Dyke, you think, you can perform when you get into your 90s. No question about it.
Ernest Borgnine did. Clint Eastwood has. I mean, it's all possible.
Yep. Clint Eastwood, is he still making movies? I don't know.
I'm not sure about that. There was a rumored project a year or two ago, but I'm not sure. It's a great question. Let's speak of Clint. Here's my question. Did he ever give you an opinion on your impression of him? Did he ever say anything about that?
I did him in front of him, and he laughed, but he didn't really appreciated it as much as I thought he would. But I did a joke that was just kind of funny, where I said Clint Eastwood used to be a plumber, and he was up in this lady's bathroom, and she was having trouble with her toilet. And he said, "Do I hear 4 flushes or do I hear 5? To tell you the truth, I can't seem to remember. But seeing this is the most powerful toilet bowl in the world, capable of blowing a man's ass off with 1 flush, you gotta know. Go ahead. Forget my toilet. Make my bidet."
Well done. Just well done. How long ago was that?
That was about, I guess, 5 or 6 years ago.
Wow. Pretty incredible stuff.
Yeah.
Let's keep talking about shows. Memories of the Merv Griffin show.
Yeah. Merv Griffin show was a great show to do. And I did his show a lot. And in Vegas, too. He came to Vegas and put on a show, and I was on it many times. And people like Merv and they were a big part of television, And he changed, though. Merv, as he got older, he got a little more pompous, and I remember sort of turning into Orson Welles. He put on weight, and he wasn't the young Merv Griffin that I remember at all. Mike Douglas was a great interviewer. Do you remember him?
Absolutely. That's where you may recall. That's where a young Tiger Woods made his claim to fame too when he was a kid. Also, Mike Douglas was a big show back in the day.
Yeah, it was. I think he came out of Philadelphia or somewhere.
Somewhere in the Northeast, I believe. Correct.
Yeah, I liked him. I did him a lot. David Frost, I did his show. You remember him?
Absolutely.
And Dick Cavett was great.
Yeah.
And Dick Cavett talked to the biggies, He talked to, oh my gosh, there's so many great celebrities. He was brilliant, and I guess he's still with us. And but he was one of my favorites.
Of all the talk show hosts that you worked with, what was the one that you got along with the best, or who became a real friend?
Oh, that's interesting. It certainly wasn't Johnny Carson. That I became a real friend with a talk show host.
Or yeah, like any of the shows that you went on, whether it was Merv, whether it was Ed Sullivan, any of these people, like who did you have the best relationship with?
I had a great relationship with Robert Goulet. We had the same birthday, and we worked a lot together. Let's see. Howard Keel. I was a big fan of Howard Keel, who made all those MGM musicals. And we became friends at the end of his life. And I was sorry when he passed on. Wonderful man, wonderful. Who else was I friendly with? Well, I was very friendly with Jimmy Stewart. I mean, we did a lot of shows together.
Absolutely.
And Jimmy was, his wife kind of worked the room, Gloria, and Jimmy usually sat in the corner, and I'd go over and sit next to him and talk to him. And his wife was all over the place. She was quite a character, his wife. And I think when she passed away, things changed for Jimmy. I don't think he was the same. That was a big love affair, those two. But you hear some stories about Jimmy that at times he wasn't very nice. But you never know what the circumstances is. He's working a movie and somebody's doing a number or something. Of course you get upset, But I can say my relationship with him, I thought he was a very nice man. And I thought that one of the nicest people I ever worked with was Jack Benny. Jack was a terrific guy, and he used to say to me, Rich, gee, if you could talk like I do 24 hours a day, my gosh, you'd be a big star.
Well, you are, and you were a big star. So there you go.
But Jack Benny, well, Jack was very finicky. You go to breakfast with him, and he'd say to the waiter, "I'd like a poached egg." She'd say, "Fine, but I don't want a big egg. I want a little egg." And we'd all sit there going, "What? Give me a little egg. I don't want a big egg." And she said, I remember the waitress, "Where would I get a little egg?" And Jack said, "From a little chicken. What do you think?" And she brought him an egg, and it looked normal to me, but Jack thanked her and gave her a big tip because she brought him a little egg.
A little egg indeed. Very interesting. Right after Easter, of course.
And then there was a story about Jack leaving his house and going down to NBC. And when he got there, they gave him a new contract for 2 years and more money. And when he drove home, he was all excited. And they said, "About the new contract?" And he said, "No, if you drive at 37 miles an hour, you only hit 2 red lights." That was more exciting for Jack than signing $1 million contract.
Well, think of what the traffic is like today in the world of Hollywood.
Yeah, I don't think he could do it now, but he was so funny. That I checked into the hotel, and the towels were so fluffy. I was so excited. That's what Jack would say. "They're so fluffy, I could hardly get them in my suitcase."
They're charging him for the towels on the way out. That's for sure.
Yeah. He probably did take the towels. Who knows?
Very well may have. All right, let's continue along. Any Bob Hope stories?
Bob Hope. Hey, Rich, Are you still doing me? Yeah. Bob was an interesting guy. He, gosh, you think of how many airline flights he took in his career. Must have been thousands. I don't think he ever was in a narrow escape or anything, but my God, he flew a lot for the troops and everywhere he went. And he was interesting because I remember sitting next to him on a flight, and we talked for a few minutes, and then he'd say to me, "Rich, I got to get some sleep." And with that, he just turned his head and he was sound asleep. Just like that. So that's where he got his energy. He could fall asleep on it just in seconds and sleep for an hour or two. I couldn't do that in a million years. But I think it kept him young.
Oh, I agree with that.
And he was known pretty well all over the world, really. He and Bing Crosby were pretty popular everywhere they went, And they both played golf. And Jack was a pretty good golfer, Bing Crosby was an excellent golfer. I think Bing got a hole-in-one at Pebble Beach one time.
Wow, that's incredible.
I think so. Yep.
Well, while we're here, before we move on, Bing Crosby stories.
Oh, I love Bing Crosby. He is great. A lot of people think he was a child beater and he was terrible with his kids. But that's not really true. He was strict with the first batch. And Gary wrote a book about him, which Philip said was nonsense. It was all made up. He wasn't that strict with his kids. I think he was. I think he wasn't. I mean, he was a little bit tough on them, but I don't think he was an ogre or beat them or anything like that. And so a lot of people think of him as a child beater, but he was, except for being a little strict, he was pretty nice with the boys, and especially with the second family. He was very nice to them. When he married Catherine, he had 3 boys, Philip and Gary, and I forget the third.
I never knew until I read, I go through all this stuff, but I never knew you worked with Carol Channing on something in Las Vegas. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. I think it was at the Riviera. She opened for me, actually, which was a bit of a surprise because she had a bigger name than I did. But this was back in the '60s, and so we were performing at the Riviera like for 2 weeks at a time, and I think we did it a couple of times. So we became very friendly. And I remember one night she came to me and she said, "Rich, let's go over to Caesars, and there's a great show over there, and it's starting at 9:00. And if we hurry, we can get there after we do our show." And I said, "Fine, Carol." So we dashed across the street, and we were a little bit late, and we're walking through the Caesars to the showroom, and some guy stopped Carol Channing and said, "Wow, I don't know who does your makeup, guy, but you look a lot like Carol Channing. What show are you in?" And he thought that she was a guy dressed up as Carol Channing, and he said, "What's your real name?" And Carol looked at him and said, "My real name is Bob Bentley, and I'm a Carol Channing lookalike." And he said, "Well, you look exactly like her. Whoever does your makeup is really a big commended because you really look like Carol." "Thank you. You know, I'm a truck driver, really, from Toledo."
That's just too funny. I have to tell you, that's just too funny for me. I'm sorry. I love that.
A truck driver from Toledo. That's funny.
That's amazing. That's so cool that you work with Carol Channing, though. I researched that, and I did not know that until that point, and I was just like, wow, that's incredible. He worked with Carol Channing. That's so amazing.
Yeah, yeah. I think a couple of times. Certainly once, anyway.
Absolutely. Okay.
Yeah, at the Riviera.
Absolutely. So that must have been like a 15-minute walk from the Riv to Caesars back in that time. That's what I would imagine it would have been, like about a 15-minute walk, probably.
Yeah.
And in those days, you could actually do the walk and not be noticed, or not have any issues about being hounded.
Yeah, if you took a car, it would be longer. Yeah.
Absolutely. Moving along, any favorite Orson Welles stories?
Orson Welles, The Wings of Man. Well, I did a movie with Orson Welles called The Other Side of the Wind. And unfortunately, I was replaced, which was a big blow to me because I was having so much fun doing the movie. And John Huston was the star of the movie. John Huston, the director. Orson directed. I had a wonderful part, but I didn't finish the film because I had commitments. I had a couple of dates that I had to do. One of them was in Dallas, and if I didn't do the date, I would be sued. And so I left, and I had no choice. And he replaced me. So I was never in the final release of The Other Side of the Wind. And Peter McDonovich took my part, and they did it all over again. So I'm not in the movie. But I can tell you that when I was making the movie with Orson, I had so much fun because Orson was hysterical. He was so big, he couldn't tie his shoelaces. And so he'd sit there directing, and then he'd get up to show us what he wanted us to do. And we'd say, don't get up, just sit there and tell us. Because if he got up, he would trip on his shoelaces and land flat on his behind, and which he did several times. And then he'd sometimes would say, anybody got any suggestions? And we'd all look at each other and say, what? About this scene we're going to do. Anybody got any suggestions that we could do it better? And he would ask all kinds of people. Some of the grips, the guy that sweeps the stage, he'd ask him. And I said, God, I can't believe you're doing this. And he would say, well, you never know when you might get a great suggestion. And, I said, did you get the name Rosebud from a grip? He said, no, that's funny. But he took suggestions from all kinds of people. And a lot of people thought he didn't do that, but he did. He was very open-minded.
Besides being with Hollywood's elite, of course, and presidents, you've also been with Queen Elizabeth II and then Prince Charles, now King Charles. Can you tell that story?
Well, yes, I met King Charles when he was Prince Charles in Ottawa, my hometown. And we were doing a show up there for some organization. And they had a number of Canadians on the show. Michael J. Fox was on the show, and there was I think Dan Aykroyd was on the show. Anyway, we did this show in Ottawa, and the Prime Minister was there. Brian Mulroney was his name, and Prince Charles was there with Diana, and they weren't speaking, and I didn't understand why. That was the start of their breakup. They didn't sit at the same table. She sat at another table, and I sat with Michael J. Fox and Brian Mulroney, the Prime Minister, and I think his wife, and it's interesting because he and Diana were not speaking at all, and things got worse, and then finally, eventually, they split. But and then the Prime Minister Mulroney turned to Prince Charles and said, "I understand you do a great impression of Peter Sellers," and he got very embarrassed. And he said, "Well, front of Rich Little, it's really not that great." And he said, "No, let's hear it." And he didn't want to do it. And I looked over at Diana, and she had her head in her on the table in embarrassment because it really was a bad impression. It was terrible. But everybody applauded, and he was embarrassed, and because I think he knew it was pretty bad. But that was my experience with Prince Charles, who is now King Charles.
And you also met the Queen, Elizabeth, that night, the second.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Just to shake hands. I forget what she said. You know, she did that a lot. Go down a line of people that are in the show and shake hands with them all. But you wouldn't get a chance to talk to her. You know, I remember a comic by the name of Joe Baker, little chubby guy, which I kind of discovered, brought him over from England, and he was a great comedian. And he had a line that was so funny. He said, "Well, I was performing in front of Queen Elizabeth, and they introduced me, and I ran out on stage and looked up at the royal box right at Princess Elizabeth." She was princess then. And I said, "Oh my God, I got to remember to buy stamps." Because her picture was on a stamp. And everyone laughed, but she didn't laugh at all. She didn't get it.
That's some funny stuff. That is some funny stuff.
He did that too. It's funny. But I never talked to her really.
But most people never meet the Queen, Rich.
No, that's true. That's true.
And have met the now King.
Yeah. Oh,
So
you met the King.
I get to meet you. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, okay.
So let me ask you, you performed all across the world. Is there any place you haven't performed that you'd like to perform before the career is officially over, whenever that is?
I've never performed in Taiwan, you know. No, there's hundreds of places I've never performed all around the world. Not true. Performed in England, and I performed in Canada and Quebec early in my career, and nobody understood English, and I bombed. I ended up doing various walks of people because I didn't have to speak, because the whole audience were French. And
you didn't have a translate. You didn't have a translator or anything like that.
No. I came out with Mr. Sunshine, and the crowd was great, and started to do my act, and nobody laughed at anything. because they didn't understand English. And
Gotcha.
it was not one of my great moments. But
But is there a place you'd like to go that you've never been before?
that I'd like to perform. Let's see. Well, I don't know. Carnegie Hall, but it's not there anymore, is it? Are they working on it? I don't know what they're doing. But I don't know whether there's any place I'd like to perform. Not really. Can't think of any. What do you think?
I was just looking on the internet just to let you know that Carnegie Hall is open and actively hosting performances, so they're still open. They're absolutely still
are
open.
they? Oh, that's good to know.
Yeah,
Well, that's
they're
good.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wrong. There's some place that closed. Didn't Trump close some well-known place? I forget.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, in closing, last one for you. Why should people come see your show in Vegas?
Well, if you're older, if you're older than 50, I think you'll know most of the people I imitate, and so it'll be a better show because you'll remember those people. If you're younger, you might have heard about them, and maybe you appreciate the joke I'm telling, but you won't know the voice. And so I get a mixture of people that know exactly who I'm doing, and some people who don't know anybody I'm doing. And I had a 15-year-old boy sit down front the other night, and he was laughing his head off. And I said, and the show was over. I beckoned him over, and I said, "You really enjoyed my show. Did you know anybody I impersonated?" He said, "Not one single person that I know that you impersonated." I said, "Really?" He said, "But you did it so well."
Well, we can see you doing it so well Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. at the Laugh Factory at the Horseshoe Las Vegas, the former Bally's and the former original MGM, by the way. See Rich Little at the Horseshoe Las Vegas. It's right across the street from the Bellagio and next to the Cromwell. Rich, it's always so great to see you. Thank you so much, as always, for telling the stories, and I'm so glad for your new Las Vegas show, and congratulations, of course.
Thank you, Chris.